German intelligence officers examining wreckage of the first captured Katyusha launcher near Orsha in July 1941 filed a report describing it as crude improvisation unworthy of serious military consideration. 16 rails welded to a truck chassis, no precision aiming mechanism, no recoil absorption system. Accuracy measured in hundreds of meters rather than tens. Wehrmacht doctrine emphasized concentrated artillery fire delivered through expensive, precision-engineered pieces like the 105mm Lefh-18 howitzer, which cost 24,000 Reichsmarks per unit, required a trained crew of 8 men, and fired 4 rounds per minute to ranges of 10,600 meters with circular error probability under 50 meters. The Katyusha could fire 16 rockets in 20 seconds, then required 20 minutes to reload. Its inaccuracy made it tactically worthless by German engineering standards. 6 weeks later, the 5th Panzer Division experienced saturation bombardment from multiple Katyusha batteries near Smolensk, and after-action reports described effects that shattered every assumption German artillery doctrine had codified over decades of professional military development. The sound alone, a screaming howl that German soldiers immediately nicknamed Stalin's organ, induced psychological trauma before the first impacts. The doctrine hadn't failed. The doctrine had never contemplated an enemy willing to sacrifice precision for overwhelming volume, or an industrial base capable of producing weapons so crude they could be manufactured at 1/10 the cost and quadruple the speed of conventional artillery. Soviet rocket artillery development emerged from desperation rather than innovation. The Red Army entered 1941 with artillery production capacity devastated by Stalin's purges, which had executed or imprisoned over 60% of senior artillery officers between 1937 and 1939. Traditional artillery manufacture required precision machining, quality steel alloys, and skilled labor, resources the Soviet Union possessed in insufficient quantities even before German invasion destroyed factories in Ukraine and Belarus. Rocket weapons eliminated these constraints. The M-13 rocket measured 1.42 meters long, weighed 42 kilograms, and could be fabricated in facilities lacking the precision tooling required for conventional shells. Each rocket contained 4.9 kilograms of TNT explosive, comparable to a 122mm howitzer shell, but delivered through a solid fuel motor that required no complex recoil mechanisms or precision boring of gun tubes. The launcher itself represented industrial efficiency taken to extremes. 16 steel rails mounted on a ZIS-6 truck chassis at 45-degree elevation, hydraulic supports for stabilization during firing, and an electrical ignition system triggered from the cab. Total cost per launcher approximated 7,000 rubles including the truck, roughly 1/4 the cost of a conventional artillery piece with equivalent throw weight. Production began in June 1941 at compressor plant in Moscow, reaching initial output of 40 launchers monthly by August and scaling to 300 monthly by December through relentless simplification of an already minimal design. The first combat deployment occurred on July 14, 1941, near Orsha, where Captain Ivan Flerov commanded an experimental battery of 7 BM-13 launchers, the formal designation few soldiers ever used, preferring Katyusha after a popular wartime song. Flerov's battery fired 112 rockets in under 90 seconds at German concentrations around the Orsha railway junction, delivering approximately 500 kilograms of high explosive across a rectangular area measuring 600 meters by 400 meters. German casualties from that barrage remain disputed, with Soviet records claiming over 300 killed and Wehrmacht reports acknowledging fewer than 100, but the psychological impact proved immediate and lasting. "The sound defies description," wrote Hauptmann Lubeck of the 58th Infantry Division in his diary, July 15, 1941. A howling shriek building in intensity until impacts begin, then explosions everywhere simultaneously. No pattern, no predictability, just terror. Our men refused to occupy the impact zone even after the barrage ended. They claimed the ground itself had become cursed. This reaction illuminated something German tactical doctrine hadn't quantified. Weapons could achieve battlefield effects through psychological devastation that exceeded their material destruction, and those effects proved independent of accuracy or precision when delivered with sufficient density across target areas.
The mathematics of saturation fire exposed fundamental assumptions in Western artillery theory. A conventional German artillery battalion fielded 12 105mm howitzers that could fire 48 rounds per minute at maximum rate, delivering approximately 720 kilograms of explosive per minute to a concentrated area. A single Katyusha battalion with 18 launchers could fire 288 rockets in 20 seconds, delivering 1,411 kilograms of explosive essentially instantaneously across a dispersed area. The German system excelled at destroying specific targets through precision engagement. The Soviet system excelled at suppressing everything within a square kilometer through overwhelming violence of action. Neither approach was objectively superior, but they optimized for incompatible tactical philosophies. German doctrine assumed wars were won through efficient destruction of enemy capabilities. Soviet doctrine assumed wars were won through breaking enemy will to resist. The Eastern Front tested both theories under conditions where German precision increasingly faced Soviet masses, and the friction between these doctrines generated casualty rates that approached industrial age horror. Technical limitations plagued Katyusha systems throughout their operational life. The M-13 rocket exhibited circular error probable around 400 meters at maximum range of 8,500 meters, making it useless against point targets and barely adequate against area targets. The solid fuel motors produced inconsistent thrust due to manufacturing variations and temperature sensitivity, degrading accuracy further in winter operations where propellant performance declined by up to 15% below -20 degrees Celsius. The launch rails wore rapidly under repeated firing, requiring replacement after approximately 200 launches, expensive maintenance for systems marketed as disposable. Trucks carrying ammunition loads proved vulnerable to secondary explosions when hit, creating casualties among crews that approached 30% annually in frontline units. Reloading times of 15 to 20 minutes left launchers defenseless and forced shoot-and-scoot tactics that reduced effectiveness. German counter-battery radar could track rocket trajectories back to launch points with sufficient accuracy to deliver lethal counterfires within 5 minutes of Soviet launches, forcing constant relocation and preventing sustained bombardments. Yet none of these flaws proved fatal because Soviet industrial capacity could absorb them through production volume. The USSR manufactured over 10,000 Katyusha launchers between 1941 and 1945, supplemented by nearly 12 million rockets. Germany never developed a comparable system because their engineering culture couldn't accept a weapon that violated every principle of precision warfare they had refined over generations. The Battle of Kursk in July 1943 demonstrated Katyusha's strategic impact when properly employed. Soviet forces concentrated over 300 rocket launcher battalions in defensive positions around the salient, supported by over 20,000 conventional artillery pieces and over 3,000 tanks. When German forces launched Operation Citadel on July 5, they advanced into the most concentrated defensive fire in military history. Katyusha batteries firing from concealed positions delivered saturation bombardments that suppressed German infantry, destroyed soft-skinned vehicles, and disrupted communications across entire sectors simultaneously. "We could not communicate, could not move, could not see through the smoke and dust," recalled Oberleutnant Karl Rumor of the 11th Panzer Division, describing the first day's assault. "Our attack disintegrated, not from casualties, but from disorganization. The rocket fire created chaos faster than our officers could restore order." Soviet records credit Katyusha batteries with destroying over 400 German vehicles and inflicting approximately 8,000 casualties during Kursk operations, though German sources dispute these figures as inflated by factors of 3 to 5. The truth likely lies between these estimates, but precise tallies miss the operational point. Katyusha created conditions where German combined arms doctrine couldn't function, forcing Wehrmacht units to fight in ways that negated their training and tactical advantages. Post-war analysis revealed that Soviet rocket artillery consumed approximately 3% of Red Army ammunition expenditure by weight, but generated disproportionate tactical effects through psychological impact and saturation capabilities that conventional artillery couldn't replicate. The cost-effectiveness proved remarkable. A Katyusha battalion required 1/3 the personnel, 1/4 the industrial capacity, and 1/5 the training time of an equivalent conventional artillery battalion, while delivering comparable suppressive effects across area targets. German forces never successfully countered Katyusha beyond tactical expedients like dispersal and rapid movement, because countering required either matching Soviet production capacity, impossible given Germany's industrial limitations, or developing doctrine that accepted imprecision as a feature rather than a flaw, which German military culture found philosophically intolerable. The institutional inability to adapt revealed something fundamental about how professional military establishments assess capability. They measure what they value rather than valuing what achieves results, and sometimes the crudest weapon wins battles that the most sophisticated weapon cannot, particularly when crude weapons can be produced in numbers that sophisticated weapons cannot match, and when psychological effects matter more than kinetic precision in breaking enemy formations under conditions of industrial-scale combat where traditional notions of accuracy become irrelevant against opponents who fight through volume rather than precision.